So one of the things that's been thrown out for years and years, and I don't think it's necessary, but I think it makes the league better, is once you get to the playoffs, just go 1 through 16 seeding. Forget East and West, just go 1 through 16 seeding. Now, I would think ideally you don't have to do that, but for some reason, and I don't have an explanation for this, the West is always better than the East. The West has better owners, better GMs, better stars, better roster. They have better winter weather. Maybe that's it. Guys in the offseason, because the NBA has mostly been October, November, December, January, February is like 75% of the regular season. Maybe the good players are like, I'd rather fly into Phoenix and LA and San Antonio than I would Philadelphia, DC, Boston in a blizzard. Maybe that's it. The only Eastern Seaboard team that attracts free agents is Miami. Great weather, aqua water. I've always thought weather has something to do with it. But, you take out Pat Riley, it's a lot of the GMs, they're all West, the good ones. The owners, the stars. 16 of the top 20 players once again are West. Since Michael Jordan retired, the East has 7 titles, the West has 14, and of the 7, LeBron's got 4. If LeBron had been in the West, it would be 21. Since Jordan retired, it would be like 19-2. I don't have an answer for it. The SEC dominates college football. I have an answer for it. There's more good high school football players in the Southern imprint. They care more. They're more passionate. They pay their coaches more. NBA, I don't know. So here's the 1 through 16. If you did it today and you reseeded the NBA, and Brian Windhorst reporting, a lot of people now in the NBA strongly considering a 1 through 16 format. I never thought it was necessary until about 5-6 years ago. You start looking at it, people talk about it, and you go, you know what? I mean, even if I give you the teams and the matchups right here, Bucks against Magic, that's East versus East, 1 versus 16. Lakers versus Nets, now that's a West versus an East. Clippers against Mavericks is 4-13, that's West versus West. Jazz Rockets, that's West versus West. Heat Thunder, East versus West. So it wouldn't change it dramatically, but over the course of time, you'd get more, I think, interesting and arguably fair matchups. And it's just the reality of it. The West, and I can't explain it, it's just for years. I mean, even when Michael Jordan was winning, you had the best team. The minute he left, it went back to the West. He stopped playing to go to baseball, it's Houston. And then he leaves Chicago, and it goes back West. It's the reality of the NBA. So college football's done this. When I was a kid, AP poll decided the national championship. Then I'm in my 20s and 30s, and it's the BCS poll. And now it's the Final Four playoff voted on by a playoff committee. Change. Get better. The sports that struggle with change, golf, baseball, have lost some connectivity to their audiences. So I think it's smart. I think it's, I don't, again, if Giannis moves west, like the rumors, turn the lights out in the conference. I mean, Ben Simmons had a girlfriend in L.A. If he moved west and Giannis moved west, why do I need the NBA package? Just have an NBA Western Conference package. I won't watch the East. Ric Bucher, senior reporter, Bleacher Report, also Fox Sports NBA analyst. He is joining us via the Cowherd Global Satellite. Brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. So Jack McCallum, legendary guy, has a piece of audio where Michael's like, I don't want to play with Isiah Thomas, and my takeaway is, so what? When you're the best player in the world, and Charles Barkley didn't like him either, and Charles won the MVP the following year, so you can argue MJ and Barkley were better, and this was a road trip. This was a month-long road trip. And if you and I and 3 or 4 guys were going to go, and one guy was doing all the homework for the trip, and he was doing all the work to organize a trip, and the guy said, yeah, I don't want to bring Colin, he's a weirdo, well, then I'd be out. Isiah was not a great hang. You had to be on buses together, trips together, dinner together, lunch together. You had Stockton Magic. So my takeaway is, so what? What if Michael said you're not coming? I don't lose any sleep on it.
Yeah, the misnomer that's been created here is that the Dream Team was the best players either in the league at the time, or that it was the coronation of these are the greatest players. It wasn't that. It was a vacation trip to Europe with a group of guys that were the most marketable in the NBA. And that's how this was selected. If it was the greatest players at the time, I'm not even sure Bird or Magic make the team. They weren't all NBA. And by the way, Isiah wasn't either. These guys went gambling in Monte Carlo. Then they went to Spain. It was all about hanging together. And the NBA reestablishing itself as the big dog on the porch in terms of basketball. We had been losing internationally, and they needed to put the NBA back up on top. So they took the most marketable players. They weren't worried about winning and losing. They knew they were going to do that. It was a matter of the impression that they made on the world about basketball in the U.S. And this is what I find fascinating about Isiah, because if you look at all of his attributes, good-looking guy, well-spoken, from the heartland, played in Indiana, two-time champion, MVP, and yet he was not marketable. Do you know what his signature shoe was? It was Asics. I didn't even know that Asics made basketball shoes. So to have him on the dream team when you're basically going out, this was an advertising vehicle for the NBA. And then you have a guy who, one reason or another, you didn't mention Scottie Pippen. He's another guy. Just a lot of guys who were like, this is going to be awkward. And by the way, even before we got the clip from Jack McClellan's podcast, if you go back and you look at what Chuck Daly said when Isiah didn't make the team, he said, yeah, I really wish I would have loved to have had Isiah, Joe Dumars, and Dennis Rodman on the team. He wasn't stumping for Isiah and saying he deserves to be on this team. He took a very politically nuanced approach by saying, yeah, there was a lot of guys from the Detroit Pistons that I would have liked to have on this team. I thought that spoke volumes long before I heard Jack's recording on his podcast.
Ric Bucher joining us. So the NBA comes out and says stories now the 16-team playoff where you have East and West playing. I've said to you for many times, we've talked on or off the air, for some reason the West has better owners, better GMs, better stars, better rosters, and they have forever. If not for Michael Jordan, the West would have just kept winning. I don't think ideally you want this, but I think in the NBA you kind of need it. I like the idea. Your thoughts on it?
I'm intrigued by it. I don't know quite yet whether it happens or not. The mindset right now with the NBA is to look at this pandemic or the circumstances that the league is under and to say, look, let's not look at this as a disadvantage. Let's look at this as an opportunity to reinvent ourselves. What are the things that we've always been interested in? Moving our schedule as far as the calendar is concerned. Having play-in games, reseeding or seeding and doing away with the conferences. So all of that is being discussed right now. And it's one of the things that I appreciate about the NBA, and particularly now, the ownership that you have. I mean, I dare say if you look at the three major sports, there are more new owners in the NBA than there are in any of the other sports. And they come with not just new money, but new mindsets. They're not beholden to the way the NBA has always done it. They're looking at it and going, how do we make this the best revenue producer that we possibly can? And so I don't know if they ultimately land on that 1 through 16 seed for this summer or moving forward, but they certainly are considering everything. And the one thing that I haven't found out is I'm trying to just canvass owners and executives and get a feel for, how much support is there for that? Because as you've mentioned, it really does undermine the East. And by the way, it's the East, once upon a time, they were at the top. It's just been 2 or 3 decades. But the East used to have it. That's where the real basketball was played. It's just we've gotten a long ways away from that. And I do think that there is a danger in that everything would be tilted toward the western part of the country. And when it comes to TV broadcasts, that then becomes a problem in itself too.
Yeah, TV ratings collapsed when LeBron came west. Okay, finally, you talk to players. We're hearing stories. We're going to have a season. Can you confirm that? And what are the players saying? What are their concerns?
Yeah, I mean, number one, everything that I'm hearing is, and I kind of knew this once Adam left the back door open as far as, if there was a drop dead date at the beginning or that they had to be done by a certain time not to interfere with next season. The reality is you can't really function in your next season unless you complete this one for salary cap and financial reasons. So they need to find a way to put a bow on this year. That said, The players are open to coming back because they've got some revenue at stake here as well. But to go directly into the playoffs, they all understand that the injury factor is far too great to not have some sort of games. And that's really what the league is wrestling with at this point. It's Las Vegas is not going to be a site because it's just too difficult to handle all of the logistics and to make it a closed bubble, essentially. I mean, you use the Magic Kingdom in Orlando, you literally have gates to get in. And so they can control that environment, which is why I think it's going to be the solo site for this. You also take care of a broadcast partner in putting it there. But the players want something, whether it's play-in games, whether it's exhibition games, whether it's some, taking the playoff teams and having you can't even call it regular season games, some sort of game, some sort of competition, 48-minute competition, just to get their bodies back in tune. It's still going to be a rough go. It's still going to be some sloppy basketball. It's not what we're going to be. It's not what we're used to in seeing in postseason basketball. But the idea that you would go from training camp to playoff level competition, the players look at that and go, we're going to have soft tissue injuries left and right. We can't possibly do this. You need at least 3, 5, 7 warm-up games of some kind before you get to that intensity.
Ric Bucher, good seeing you, buddy. Nice seeing you.
Good to see you. Nice hair, by the way.
Yeah, I'm doing it myself. It's called the hand. That's what I'm
well
doing.
Done.
That's what I'm doing these days. It looks like, thanks, Rick.